Right, so I want to introduce you to our school information management system that we're calling Zamed. So let's get started. Um, this system is offered by Glad Tidings, which is a Zambian company. It's actually been in existence for quite some time now. We have our offices in Osaka. Now, the world has been going through different transitions, or at least factors that influence our economies have been changing over time. From the so-called Stone Age, which I don't know if that was actually real, but we've gone through the industrial age and then information age in the 1960s when computers began to be used, and then we went into the internet and information age. But we're actually now in sort of digital age, which is being driven by artificial intelligence. So right now, what really drives economies in the world, it's data. So you've got data, plus software, and artificial intelligence. And the future is not really spelled as SOFTAWAR, but it's actually spelled as, sorry, the future is not spelled as FUTURE, it is spelled as SOFTATWARE, which is software. What that simply means is that a lot of things that we have to do these days depend on the data. The internet itself has been generating a lot of data since 1991 when the web was actually invented by Tim Berners-Lee. So on the web, you find a lot of data there. This data could be structured, it could be unstructured, there's quite a lot of it. And this is what is driving decisions in organizations and different places. So the same thing goes in the education sector. Now, there is a problem of information management. Um, Even though we're now living in a digital age, there's still a lot of manual processes in terms of how data is managed and how it is reported. If some people are using tools, you might find that those tools are not integrated. For example, people are using Excel, or there are people who are masquerading and saying they are offering systems to schools, but it's actually an Excel sheet. And then you also have a communication problem. So there are schools that are still relying on open days, for instance, for them to be able to communicate with parents. Some schools are relying on letters. They have to write letters signed by the head teacher, and then pupils carry those letters and take them to parents. And then you also have an issue of central access to data, right? How do the higher levels gain access to real-time data rather than depending on these reports that schools have to send? So these are some of the challenges that as Glad Tidings are actually trying to tackle. So how do we address these challenges? Now, the challenges that I just described are actually faced by all stakeholders within the education system. And here we're talking about the parents themselves. Most parents have trouble, for instance, tracking the performance of their children. They might get a report card, yes, but are they actually able to track the performance of their children from start up to finish? Schools have this challenge. Then you also have these higher levels that have to depend on manual processes. So um, we need to be concerned, of course, um, and we need to be able to address this problem. In fact, the government has put in quite a lot of effort to try and solve this information management problem. The 8th National Development Plan, for instance, is looking at digital transformation of the country. And there's been several ICT policies from 2007 that are looking at a Zambia transformed through pervasive use of ICTs by 2030. So as a company, we're actually working towards that, to support this vision of the government. You have what is known as the Smart Zambia initiative. This is what we're actually trying to work towards. So the solution that we're offering is called Zamed, and this is something that we started working on back in 2013. We gathered requirements from different stakeholders, from schools. We had meetings with district officers or provincial education officers, including the Ministry of Education Standards Office itself. We met with with the standards officer, and they're able to tell us some of the reports that they're actually interested in. So this application comes in three forms. We have a web portal that is used by schools as well as higher levels. We also have a desktop application, which we've been trying to connect to the web portal. And then we also have a mobile application, which is being used by the parents. This system was recommended by the Ministry of Education way back in 2013. Actually, we got a letter, you can see there, a letter from the then acting permanent secretary, HC Tukombe, right, which was saying that this system is actually good and they've recommended it for use in schools. Now, the system that the ministry recommended then, in fact, was, it's far less in terms of functionality compared to what we're now offering. So what we have now is much more advanced. So Zamed, like I said, has a desktop application. So you can see this picture that is on the left here. This is a screenshot of the desktop application, and then here you have the web portal. But then you also have this mobile app that parents can use to track performance, and learners are able to use to take quizzes from past papers in order for them to prepare for exams. What are the features of this system? So schools can manage and analyze enrollments results. The higher levels are able to access data centrally, and then parents are able to track the performance of their children, and all levels are able to communicate via SMS or email. That means DEBS officers, for instance, can send announcements to all the staff members at lower levels. Within a school, an administrator can send announcements to the staff members. You can send announcements to parents. You can send reminders, for example, about payments, if there's issues of payments or results, or maybe some other activities that you want to announce. In general, these are the features that the system offers. So you can see here we have the part for parent access. We have a timetabling feature. There is an accounting part. Even though these two have not been activated that much yet, we're actually yet to activate the timetable one. But the rest of these are actually there, like administration, enrollment, and results and announcements. So what the system offers is real-time access to data. Now, what does that mean? Quite often, the higher levels, let's say the DEBS officers, they do some analysis. They want to analyze results. You also have, for example, the Ministry of Education comes up with a educational statistical bulletin where they look at, okay, let's look at the learners. What are the demographics of these learners? How many males? How many females? How many are from rural areas? How many from urban areas? How many pupils do we have of each class or each grade, and so forth? Those are things that you don't need to now collect manually because schools already have that information. So as the schools are working with this data, as they're adding the pupils, a higher level is actually able to generate that data on the fly. Now, the problem of asking people to fill in reports is that you may not actually get accurate data. So if you ask a school to say, can you fill in, this data about your pupils, and then they have to fill in that data manually, you're asking people to use an error-prone process. Now, if you're collecting that data from the data that they actually use, then you're assured of getting reports that are more accurate. For instance, if you had to ask a school to give you a report of the learners that they have, they don't have to start going through registers to calculate how many learners that they actually have. They'll be using the same system. They simply go to the system and they're able to get those numbers from there. In fact, you don't even need to ask a school to give you those numbers. As a DEBS officer or as a PO, you can simply log in and you're able to see the numbers for yourself from all the schools within your jurisdiction. So each level is able to view data for that jurisdiction. So at a higher level, Ministry of Education is able to view all the data. That is aggregate data. Then provincial officers can actually view data for the provinces, and DEBS can view data for their districts. And then, of course, the school can view data for itself. So as an example here, we're seeing a report that shows, the schools that we have and the different running agencies. And you can see that the majority of the schools that we have are run by GRZ. And here you can see the listing of the schools from each province. Now, this is something that a higher level is able to generate on the fly, just like we're able to do it from our system. You can, for instance, analyze data about teachers. How many teachers do we have in each province? What kind of qualifications do they have? How many, let's say, have master's degrees or bachelor's degree? This is, these are reports that are readily available from the system. And so you can generate tables like that, this one that I'm showing you on the left, or you can actually have something like that on the right. These charts are automatically generated. You don't even need to to learn how to produce charts. So this is an example of the desktop application and the type of reports that it produces. The advantage of the desktop application is that you don't need internet all the time. Now, why we haven't sort of activated the desktop one is that we're still making it a way that it syncs with the online portal. So at the moment, what is active is the online portal and the mobile application. But once we are done with that syncing capability, then you should be able to work offline on the desktop. And then once you have internet connection, you can actually push your data online. This is an example of a report that shows the PPUs that completed, PPUs that stopped. So if you want to see how many stopped for financial reasons, how many stopped because they were transferred, and you can see here in this report that we had a higher number of PPUs that stopped in Southern Province because of relocation or transfer. You can see there's a report of those that stopped school because of desertion. Yeah, and this is just how it shows up in the desktop application. Another example of a report that you can produce from our system is, these reports that you get as higher levels, the pass rates. So here you can compare pass rates among the males and the females across different subjects. And yeah. Then this is an example of a report card, which is automatically generated with different comments, different analysis. Here is another example of a report that you can generate. If you wanted to see at a glance and say, let us see which subject and which class is performing below 40%. Okay, so you can see that all these that are in red, as an example, are cases where the average score in a class in a certain subject is below 40. So already this would give you a hint as to which classes have problems and in which subjects. For instance, you can see here 10C, biology, the average is less than 40, chemistry is less than 40, civic education, the same thing goes for 10E, 10H, and so forth. Yeah, so these are examples of analysis that you can produce. Our system also allows you to create forms. So the ministry might say, okay, I would like to collect data about something. And they create these forms and they maybe send people out in the field and say, can you go and collect data like this and that and that. But with our system, you don't actually need to do that because you can basically create a form and you can say this form is going to be filled in by teachers or it's going to be filled in by a school. That means the school administrators fill in those forms. And you can, you can directly collect that data within the system itself and do your analysis within the system. Yes. Okay, so I think that was just some other figure. So in summary, this is the system. Now let me just quickly jump to the web application that we'll be working with, um, so that I can also introduce you there. So the web application requires you to log in, and when you're logged in, it will show you your username. So of course here, it will show you the name of your school, and then over here, it will show you your username. And then if you click on that icon over there, you got an option to change your password or to log out. Okay. And then on the left here is where you find different menu items. You got menus relating to classes and subjects. You got menus to do with staff members, menus to do with PPUs, managing PPUs, registering PPUs, merging PPUs, and so forth. There's menus to do with results and announcements. And then when you scroll down a little bit, there's this part that talks about the system, like managing users and roles. Here you can have a view of our company documents. There you're able to generate quotations when you need to pay for something. For example, you want to buy SMSs and so forth. Now, as I mentioned that this system allows you to send announcements, that means you can actually purchase SMS bundles. Then you also have reports over here. So there are different kinds of reports. So this training is actually going to take us through all these different components of the system or different modules of the system. So I hope you enjoy this training, and I hope that at the end of this training you'll be able to make full use of the system in terms of the analysis and the reports that you have to generate.